Welcome back to Easy Peasy English, EPE Academy. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. In today's explainer, we're diving into something super practical. We're catching up with our favorite language learners, Stefan and Antonia, as they head back to university life after a trip abroad. And, along the way, we'll unlock exactly how and when to drop essential idioms and phrasal verbs right into your everyday conversations. Let's get into it.
So tell me, have you ever felt like you learned English straight from a textbook, but then real life sounds, well, completely different? Yeah, it's such a common frustration. You spend hours memorizing these endless vocabulary lists, but then you step out into the real world, and native speakers are using phrases that just seem to bend all the rules. Well, today we're bridging that gap. We're going to see exactly how these natural, everyday expressions actually work in context.
Throughout this explainer, we're going to contrast that rigid, textbook English you might be used to with the fluid, everyday idioms that native speakers actually use. And we'll do this by looking at how language totally adapts to its environment. We'll start by checking out the relaxed, sensory language you'd use on a vacation, and then see how drastically things shift when you're thrown back into the structured reality of academic life.
Right, so to really grasp these phrases, we need some context. Let's trace Stefan and Antonia's timeline here. We'll look at the mindset of exploring Barcelona on day 1, grabbing that flight home on day 3, and contrast that with the sharp transition back to reality at the campus cafe by day 6. As you'll see, the environment completely dictates the language.
Winding down in Barcelona.
All right, so our first travel expression is wander around. This just means to walk slowly through a place without a specific destination, really just enjoying the surroundings. It is literally the perfect phrase for a vacation, right? It emphasizes that slow, totally unscheduled pace. No rush, no agenda, just discovering a place step by step.
Just imagine exploring a new city and saying, let's just wander around the Gothic Quarter. No maps, no phones, just following our instincts. That's exactly what Stefan said. By ditching the maps and the phones, you really embrace the whole spirit of wandering around.
And, as you wander, you naturally arrive at our next phrase, which is to take in. This means to absorb, observe, or just fully experience something, like a view or an atmosphere. Think about physically stopping to appreciate a street musician or sitting quietly to look at an impressive historic cathedral. You're not just looking at it, you're really taking it in.
Now, because you're just following your instincts on holiday, you might find yourself using our third phrase, pop into. This means to visit a place briefly or casually, usually without any planning. Like you might spontaneously pop into a tiny bookshop to grab some poetry, or maybe a charming cafe for a quick coffee. It perfectly captures that impulsive, easygoing vacation vibe.
And while you're grabbing that coffee, you might need our next expression, wind down. This means to gradually relax after a period of activity or excitement. Say you've had days of intense sightseeing. Taking a break with your drinks is a great way to wind down. It's that conscious choice to just relax and reset.
But of course, eventually reality calls, and that brings us to head back. This simply means to return to a place, especially where you started. Whether you're watching the sunset and suddenly realize you need to catch a flight, or you just know the trip is over, you have to head back. It's the phrase that basically closes the book on the vacation chapter.
But here's what's really fascinating. Notice how sharply the language and the reality shift once that vacation ends. That vacation mindset, having no agenda, just wandering, is instantly replaced by an academic mindset. Suddenly, it's all about hard deadlines, 2 presentations, and a massive research project. The language you need to survive this new environment is a whole different ballgame.
Part 2. Back to reality on campus.
Okay, so jumping into campus life, we start with the idiom out of the blue, which means unexpectedly or without any warning whatsoever. Think of it like a lightning bolt coming out of a clear blue sky. This phrase is absolutely perfect for Stefan and Antonia's unexpected reunion. They hadn't planned to meet up at all, but they just bumped into each other at the campus cafe right before their afternoon class.
Antonia captures this surprise beautifully. She tells Stefan, "It really was out of the blue. I was just thinking about our trip yesterday." Notice how using this expression instantly creates a friendly conversational tone? It conveys her surprise so much better than just saying something boring like, "I didn't expect to see you."
So, as they sit down and catch up, the harsh reality of the new semester sets in, bringing us to brush up on. This means to improve or refresh a skill or piece of knowledge that you've learned in the past. Stefan admits his suitcase is actually still sitting unpacked in his room, and worse, he's feeling pretty nervous about 2 upcoming presentations. He realizes he desperately needs to reactivate his academic skills.
He literally tells Antonia, "I think I'm going to brush up on my English every evening for a while." And actually, this shared anxiety motivates both of them. They agree to practice speaking English together after class. Brushing up on is such a staple expression anytime you're in a professional or academic setting and you need to polish a skill you haven't used in a bit. From there, their chat shifts to their heavy workload, which introduces the phrase narrow down. This simply means to reduce the number of choices until only the very best ones remain. Antonia is dealing with a super overwhelming problem. She brainstormed 15 different ideas for her research project. That is way too many to be useful, so she had to actively focus her options.
And this table brilliantly shows how she handled it. She took that massive list of 15 ideas and narrowed it down to just 3 solid academic choices: artificial intelligence in education, online learning, and language learning through social media. Narrow down is an incredibly practical phrasal verb that immediately signals focus and decision-making.
Looking at Antonia's narrowed-down list brings us right to our next expression, a fresh perspective. This collocation just means a new way of thinking about something. When they're discussing the options, Stefan mentions he really likes the interactive social media topic, and Antonia agrees. She explains that a recent conversation actually gave her a completely new angle on her research.
As she puts it, talking to one of my professors yesterday gave me a fresh perspective. Ask, how does it help people? Her professor's advice shifted her entire focus away from just studying the cold technology of social media and towards exploring its human application. Getting that fresh perspective is what finally cemented her decision.
Well, deep in this highly engaging academic discussion, they suddenly hit our final idiom: lose track of time. I'm sure you've been there. It means to become so interested in something that you completely fail to notice how much time has actually passed. Catching up and discussing their topics, they get totally engrossed in the conversation.
You can practically hear the sheer panic in Antonia's voice when she finally checks the clock and says, "Oh no, it's already 20 past 2. We completely lost track of time." Because they were so deeply engaged in sharing their fresh perspectives, the time totally slipped away from them, and their class starts in just 10 minutes.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Context is everything. Half of these 10 essential expressions articulate the sensory, relaxed pace of a holiday, while the others give you the exact tools you need to navigate surprise, academic focus, and urgency on a bustling campus. Mastering these situation-specific phrases is the key to instantly making your English sound more dynamic and conversational.
So, I'll leave you with this. Which of these everyday expressions are you going to try using in your very next English conversation? I challenge you to step away from the rigid textbook rules this week. Bring a fresh perspective to your own language learning and try injecting just one of these phrases into a real-life chat. Who knows? You might just have such a great conversation that you completely lose track of time. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning.